Women may have made great strides in the workplace over the past few decades, but a new book suggests women may be inadvertently hurting their careers with their own behaviors. It's called The Male Factor. Shaunti Feldhahn is the book's author. She is here along with Donnie Deutsch, chairman of advertising agency Deutsch Inc. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
So this is not a book you wrote overnight. It took you 7 years to compile this. You interviewed 3,000 men, conducted all these studies, determined that men and women perceive things differently when it comes to workplace etiquette, and some behaviors may actually hurt women. So I want to start with something that surprised you most in the research, and that has to do with the way men view emotion at work. Now, are you talking about women crying or more than that?
It's a lot more than that. I actually thought, we all know men are uncomfortable with emotions in the workplace. I had not realized that it's way more than fighting back tears. They see a woman getting defensive, when questioned, or personality conflicts, or pushing too hard. There's a whole host of things when I was talking to these men anonymously that they view as she's getting emotional. And because they don't know how female brains are wired, they don't realize that we can process a lot of emotion and be thinking clearly at the same time. So they say, gosh, like this is a very common comment, my female colleague got really defensive in this meeting when we were questioned, so I couldn't trust your judgment of the whole meeting. I mean, we need to know some of these perceptions that they really think but never say.
They're sort of scratching your head. Are you agreeing with this or not agreeing with this?
Well, first of all, let me preface, I'm from the Bill Clinton School of Management.
What does that mean?
I've always surrounded myself with women smarter than myself. So I'm a guy that built a very successful business with a lot of very powerful women. There are clearly differences in the workplace. One strength I found of women over men, women more collaborative. Interestingly enough, I found I've spent much more time managing men and their egos, how big offices are, how big their paychecks are, how big everything is, versus women. They want to be collaborative. They want to get paid fairly. So I've spent a lot more time managing the emotional ups and downs of men than I have of women.
You talk about a male ego because in your book you found out that women can quite easily deflate a male ego without even realizing it.
Yeah, and obviously it can be pretty damaging if you don't realize that that's what you're doing. We were talking about this earlier. I had never realized that underneath the male ego, there's a lot of self-doubt. And there's basically a lot of...
We're just weeping and we want to be held. That's pretty much it,
Well, seriously though, there was a lot of self-doubt under these guys basically saying, gosh, I want to tackle a challenge and I want to do this, but I'm really afraid that somebody's going to figure out I'm not sure what I'm doing. So we as women, we can hit that nerve without even realizing it. For example, one of the things that was really common, I used to work down on Wall Street, and I'd raise my hand in a meeting and say, hey, Bob, why did you do that on the report? And I had no idea that Bob was basically hearing, when I'm asking a why question, he's basically hearing, are you challenging me? Are you saying that I don't know what I'm doing?
But I don't know if that issue, Frank, if that man might have that same reaction for many men asking that question.
Well, that's exactly what I
think,
say in the book.
Clearly, by nature, and obviously there's generalizations, but I found that to be true, having managed thousands of people, that men are more confrontational by nature. Men are more hunters by nature. That's what it is. But what's interesting, though, go ahead, Mary.
No, I want to switch gears for a minute because you also conducted this test, which is very interesting, which is the difference maybe between men and women. You took 400 men, you randomly put them into two groups, then you introduced them to a woman who was going to talk to them about something, and depending on what she wore, the reaction was very different. So let's take a look at some of this tape first.
Our marketing and research team recently polled over 400 customers in Trendsetter stores all over the country to ask them for their top customer suggestions. Today, I will be briefing you on the 4 statements made most consistently by Trendsetter customers. These 4 customer suggestions will serve as the backbone for our upcoming marketing and design campaign.
So essentially, what they showed is in one case, the men are looking at the woman's eyes. The next minute, when she's wearing the low cut, they're looking at her whatever.
A lot of women don't necessarily realize that wearing the low cut top or the tight skirt or whatever it is, it kicks a man back into kind of a biological part of the brain where he views that as very sexual, and he's basically trying to pull his brain back from that.
So he's not getting the information right. That's what you found out.
He's basically going, look at her face, look at her face, look at her face, and he's not hearing what she's saying.
But once again, is this a sex? I think if a man dressed provocatively and was not dressing professionally, the same thing would happen. There are two sides to that. What is very interesting, what I want to warn women against, a lot of women come in the business place and they think they have to dress like men. Wrong. I always say, look, viva la différence. You don't want to flaunt like that, but be a woman also. Be a powerful woman and do not hide your womanness do not exploit it.
Yeah,
and I think that's
quickly, because we're almost out of time.
Yeah.
When I first started to look at this story, I got a little defensive myself. I felt like, why should I conform because a man doesn't think the way that I do?
And I thought the same thing. And honestly, here's really the way I look at it. I used to work with large Japanese banks on Wall Street. I would never go into Japan assuming that I knew how that culture viewed the world and assuming that I knew how what I was doing and saying was being perceived. I'd have to do a little work to understand, you know what? Men have all of these internal expectations and assumptions. We got to do a little work. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to agree with them. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to adapt.
Just smack us around a little bit, straighten us out, and we'll get it right.
We certainly need to know that what is going on inside their heads.
So we can manipulate you. That's what
we're just dumb, cleavage-looking guys around here. By the way, when you did the two side by side, the crew in unison said, "I'm listening." So we have these tests, but then there's real.
Oh yeah,
I don't know, guys. Did you hear?
All right,
they were like they're raising their hands. I heard.
All right, you boob you. All right, the book is The Male Factor. You
just
can
give me long enough on the air. I'll take it right down. You know I will.
Shaunti Feldhahn, Donnie Deutsch, thank you very much.